And I say that again, I know I sound like a women's libber, and I don't mean to put any other group down, but I truly believe as nurturers in our DNA and what we're built for, that we're going into the Aquarian age, leaving the Piscean age, which is an age of consensus. And who better to build consensus as opposed to top down than women? Because it's in our DNA. We're nurturers. We're multifaceted. That's just the way we're wired. So capitalize on that and build a stronger world, step by step, brick by brick, step by step.
Welcome to Attitude of Altitude podcast, presented by Planet of One. We're sharing stories and conversations, encouraging and empowering listeners to be bold, take action, and be your best self, so we may be the change we desire to see in this world. Know that your attitude determines your altitude in life. Welcome to the podcast. Hi, Liz, and welcome back to the podcast.
Hey, Rima, great to be here with you.
Thank you.
Alan.
Thank you. And Alan, if people don't know who Alan is, he is a friend and a co-host of the podcast, and he'll be with us. This is the first episode we're actually getting to speak with someone that we love together, and he'll be here for a portion of the podcast, but you'll be seeing him a lot more on further podcasts. So Alan, welcome too.
Thank you, Rima. I was originally behind the scenes and co-thought the podcast up with you. So it's good to be on mic with you and with Liz, especially.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Liz, we know we've had a previous podcast. So again, for the listeners, go back and look for Liz. But Alan, you would like to ask Liz a couple of things to launch us off, because I have a lot of wonderful questions for you since your first journey and since you published your book. But Alan, I'll let you have the floor to ask what you'd like.
Well, I just want to start by saying, like, the theme of this season of the podcast is really about embarking on new journeys. And Liz, you came to mind immediately because, since I've known you, you've like pivoted your career from being this, dare I say, badass corporate Wonder Woman, and then shifted gears into this emotionally heart-centered healer. So maybe you can take us on a really, really brief journey about how that happened.
Well, thank you, Alan, because I marvel at myself. Frankly, I'm kind of surprised and say, I pinch myself. Is this the same person that I was 10 years ago?
Yeah.
And it's not. I mean, I am, but I'm not. It's really kind of an out-of-body experience a little bit in the sense of, being part of corporate America as also the first woman in marketing in Fortune 500 companies. I reflect back and I say, wow, how did you do that? Yeah. And I just did it. And it was a lot of support and caring from a lot of my male peers and subordinates and superiors and all of those levels. But I reflect and say, what kind of contribution did I make to the world? And I query that and say, I'm not sure. I mean, one thing that comes to mind when I was VP of marketing for Max Factor, and I was working 12, 14-hour days and traveling the world, and a lot of it was very exotic and very stimulated, and life in the fast lane. And it really echoed what our country values as far as what it means to be successful.
Yeah. And
I was on track. But anyway, I asked myself, very weary one evening as I'm sitting in my office, what am I contributing? And the basic question or answer I could give myself was, well, I'm giving a woman a tube of lipstick when maybe that's all she could afford to lift herself up. And I thought, wow. And yet I kept going because, again, we were rewarded with toys, goodies, and recognition.
Sure.
And when my company was sold off, and that forced a retirement, and I probably would have kept going. My life took a completely different turn, also with some more losses that I talk about in Finding Hidden Courage. But I did a complete 180. And I went deep and I started to question, why am I here? What am I supposed to be doing here? What's my purpose? And that led me on a spiritual path that is my foundation today. And
It's wonderful.
I hope that answers the question.
No, it does. And a lot of that kind of carves out the path, right? A lot of the things you went through. A lot of people don't extract that meaning behind what you've done and keep going the corporate route, but you saw the meaning behind it. Like I like you actually said something really wonderful. It's like I gave somebody, a means to uplift themselves, and to pivot something like sales and marketing, which I do personally, into something that was more heart-centered is kind of speaks to the core of your being. So I think it's really interesting that you did that. How long were you in the business world?
Oh, almost 40 years.
Wow. Okay, right. So you had all that experience
Yeah.
and then it turned into, like you said, a 180. Maybe it wasn't a 180 because you probably were already in there. It was now your heart coming out,
Truly. My heart finally coming out and saying, again, I reflect when I was a little girl, I was about 8 years old. And I remember this very clearly. One day I asked myself, what am I here for? And I thought that was an unusual question for a young child.
Yeah.
So I knew that I came into this incarnation, this existence, this birth to do something different. I mean, I would not have asked myself that question if there was not something else for me to be doing here.
Sure.
And I now connect the dots and say, it was always the plan. Right. That I truly believe that we bring in and call in people and events to grow our spiritual beingness, and that we choose all of the people around us and experiences for lessons to evolve into what we're here to do.
Yeah. It's really great.
I was excited to hear her mention that the value that we put on success in this country and what it translates to. Not just this country, there's other countries, but in general, the value of what a successful human being is.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of your journey of why you really are pivoting and have pivoted.
Well, and why I'm around the two of you is an example in our mastermind. In Rima, what you're doing, and you have from the beginning of time since I've met you, and you, Alan, being in the education world and marketing and sales, and yet having a soul. I mean, a soul in the sense of you bring that forth in everything that you do. And that to me is the integration of what we're trying to do right now in everything that we do. It's not about choosing a different path. It's about picking a path with soul. And whatever we do, we bring that integration in with us, that I don't have to X out 40 years. I'm very grateful for everything that I did. And sometimes I feel sad that it's taken me so long to get here, but all of it is for a purpose. Everything I did was another Lego to get me to where I am today and erecting this internal house, so to speak.
Absolutely. Yeah. It builds who you really are,
Yeah.
And a lot of people feel like they have to do something immediately, but in reality, like, look, just move forward.
That's right.
Go down your path, right? And then eventually you'll figure out, okay, there's forks in the road that you're going to take, and each one leads to a different path. So, just keep going. As long as you have something in your heart that says,
well, that's the key. What you just said, have the consciousness somehow awake to what Rima said is, what is the purpose of what you're doing and why are you doing it, and finding joy and giving in whatever that path is. I don't care if you're a waitress, if you're a taxi driver, whatever you are, finding that nugget of a joy, as well as what interaction you're feeling with people that you're connecting with in the world.
Yeah. I'm really excited to hear. And I'll give the questions back to Rima, because I could say I got hog up all your time, to be honest with you. But I am excited to hear, because there's two levels that you've gone on since I've known you. One was building what you now have, this book Finding Hidden Courage. It's really a program. It's really a thought process in a weird way, but like you actually have a tangible copy, which we're seeing in the background. I actually have a copy at my house, and it's a wonderful book, and Rima's in it. And so you're leading up to what you've built for the Finding Hidden Courage as a program and as a book, and then your recent trip, which is all the more amazing that you went to Africa. So Rima, if you want to take over the questions here, I'm really excited to hear what the journey that you went through here, and more recently the actual journey, the physical journey.
And Liz,
yes,
kudos to you for completing this process of Finding Hidden Courage and all the interviews you've completed.
Thank you.
And publishing it and having it be a bestseller. Could you tell us what has that been like, that journey from the day you started to actually becoming a bestseller? Because I noticed a shift in you.
Thank you. Well, it warms my heart. Thank you. I believe that Mastermind, which I acknowledge in my book, was the catalyst for actually getting it out of here, my soul, my heart, in my mind, to actually fruition. Because the Yes Mastermind that we're in, you do it. You just don't keep talking about it. You put it forth. And I needed that. I needed that shove, that push, that reinforcement, that support. That, and also losing my daughter, my niece. I've had a lot of losses that are talked about in the book. She was the final, I guess, straw for me that said, okay, I need to do something about this, because the pain inside of me is so overwhelming. The loss, the sense of loss and grief, that I knew I was not alone in this journey. And all I had to do was listen to other people's stories and journeys, even in Mastermind. And quite a few of the stories that I have are from people that were in Mastermind, to know what happened to them, what tools did they use, and how is their life different today as a result of it. Plus, I'm an artist, and I was taking a course in art expression, another form for art therapy, at UC San Marcos, in working with hospice, and seeing the amazing results of using art as a modality for healing and cathartic release. That then I thought, okay, this is another subpart. When I wrote the book, it was never about that. It just evolved. So it is an iterative process by just allowing spirit to really guide me. It was a 3-year process. And many times I just wanted to give up and think, oh, this is ridiculous. This is a pipe dream. This is not going to happen. What are you doing? Because it took money to do it as well. I mean, I wasn't getting money from it, but I had the wherewithal to do it. And something just kept pushing me forward. And that was the genesis of the book, Finding Hidden Courage. And I feel a sense of contentment within in having it be on Amazon, a bestseller for that period of time when it was first released, and excited about that and proud. I was rereading it the other day and I thought, wow, this is pretty good. Where before I just wanted to get it out and I wasn't really feeling the quality of it. And when I went back, I can actually say I'm really proud. And I'm proud for people's stories and their journeys and their sharing their vulnerability. Because I learned from people more than books and workshops. I learned from their actual experience. I always have. And I guess that's what made me a good marketer, to try to understand what is the motivation behind everything. Yeah. So maybe that answers part 1, Alan. And then part 2 is, now there's a lull and I'm saying, okay, there was kind of a letdown a little bit after it was on Amazon. And I thought, okay, what next? Because I still felt there's more. My job is not done. There's more within me, and I'm not sure what form it's going to take. But then the trip to Africa came. And as a result of that, a dear friend of mine who actually helped me lay out the book, the art director of the book, she's traveled to India and China, and she's an amazing artist and a teacher. She was a teacher at college, on a college level of art, an art therapy, not art therapy, but art appreciation. Anyway, she said, you have an opportunity. You're meeting with tribes. You have an opportunity to talk to these people and find out the extension of your own finding hidden courage. How did they find the courage to live their lives when things come up or just day to day? And I thank her for this. And so I went ahead and contacted the safari director, and I explained, I had my book out, and she said she arranged to have translators and at each of the tribes. And I said, well, what could I bring? She said, bring beads. So I went to Michael's, because so many of the tribes that we were visiting, some of their livelihood is bead making and jewelry and so many beautiful things. So I brought beads with me, and it was an exchange, and they were really surprised. And I got a great opportunity of finding out how much the same we are at our core values. And when you travel, you see this time and time again. No matter what color we are, what clothes we're wearing, what mud huts, what fancy homes, we want the same thing. We want to receive love and give love. And our family is so core, and our children so core in doing the right thing. Now, how we go about it is very different. And I was humbled by these, what I deemed poor people, until I reevaluated, I'm looking through my lens.
Yep.
And that's an unfair comparison. And I saw the beauty that they had that I've lost and we've lost. They are in community. They don't have television. They don't have computers. Some of them have smartphones, but they're sitting around with each other, talking eyeball to eyeball, heart to heart, not taken away by, let's buy this, let's have this, what does someone else have down the street that's better than I am? The artificial conditioning that we have. And travel, I say to anyone that's listening, travel as much as you can, because it broadens your whole horizon in life to be able to see the commonality and yet the differences that I learned from. They taught me a lot, and I'm still processing, because it's only been, well, today is a week that I'm back.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm still there. In fact, I had a dream that literally I was so definitively in Africa, yet I thought, well, why am I thinking of San Diego? And I really awoke from absolutely still feeling like I'm there.
Yeah.
And in fact, I was driving and there were empty fields around me, and I kept looking for the zebras and the elephant. And I did. It was like, well, where are they?
Yeah, we have boring fields here.
Yeah,
by comparison.
it's like, well, where are they? Because they're all over. I mean, they're just like, look at palm trees. They're, oh, a herd of elephants. Oh, wow. I love that. I love that, because I have such an animal connection. That to me is really dear.
Yeah, yeah.
What did you pick up from some of the women that you spoke to, Liz? That's
Yes,
significant compared to what we live in modern countries, if we want to call them modern countries.
Yeah, right. I think they're backwards. It's just the opposite.
Yeah.
Their strength and courage.
Mhm.
Women do most of the work in the village. They build the houses, and the houses are of twigs and thatch and sometimes plastic for the top, the rains. And in the Maasai tribes, they're beautiful. They are made out of cow dung and then thatch on top, no plastic. The first village we were in had a lot of garbage and plastic that they repurposed to keep the rain out. And inside is so humble that a baby sleeping there on the ground, but covered, and, it's tiny, and yet they're happy. So women especially are so strong. You talk about courage. They really run the show, even though they're second class citizens as far as being still beat up by their husbands. They're still kind of treated as cattle, or, not as valued because of some of their society. Men have met multiple wives, which, I knew about, but it was a real gulp, because the children are the ones that suffer then. And there was so much emphasis on education. I was blown away. That one woman that was married to the chief of this village, who spoke pretty good English, actually. I asked her where she learned it. She said in school. She had 3 children and only one husband. And I said, what about multiples? She said, I don't care how many people he marries, as long as the children are all educated. After they're educated, he can have as many wives as he wants. But I want the children to be educated. And the way they get wives is a dowry. So if the family of a girl has 15 goats, then that's a really good deal, and she gets a husband. If she has 8 goats, not so good. So that's the monetary inhumaneness that they put on. But again, I am judging their culture by my standards. But I would say the overwhelming theme is courage and resilience and strength, much more so than is witnessed here.
Did you by any chance ask them what they thought of the United States and women outside of their countries?
Yeah, I did where I could. And we had an Aussie guy who was fabulous guy who had been to Africa many times and knew the ropes. And I asked him, as well as some of the people, the women in the tribe, and also some of the men in Nairobi when we were at the hotel. So I'll give you a general response first. They looked at America as the land of democracy before January 6th. That went out the window after that. They no longer value or look at us as a model.
Wow.
It's very sad.
Yeah.
Very, very sad. Now, the women in the tribes didn't talk about that, but the people that had been exposed to, news said that, both in Australia and in Africa. The women in the tribes looked at American women as rich and not necessarily family oriented. It was hard to get the exact translation, but they looked at us as different in that they saw more of our materialism than, let's say, our heart. That's the translation that I got. They were very cautious because, you're there and they don't want to hurt or offend you. But at the same time, I could feel the underlining kind of feeling that we were getting. Yeah.
And interesting that you're saying that. Did you feel like they were open with you in sharing what's happening with them?
Yes and no. There was a little bit of a performance in that they're going through their own transitions of their progression. An analogy is the Native American Indians in this country. We took away all their land, and then we isolated them into segments of where we wanted them to live. And then as they progressed in our way, and that didn't work because they lost many of their own values, and they're kind of in an abyss somewhere in the middle with the casinos now and money and a lot of rehabilitation and drugs and a lot of other things. I see a little bit of that happening in that when we were visiting, they knew that they wanted to dance for us and they wanted to sell their wares because this is a source of income. And even though in one tribe, in one locale, we were almost on the border of Ethiopia, and not that many people ever went up there. It was a 7-hour bumpy, dusty, no paved roads to get there. So they didn't have a lot of tourists. They didn't have a lot of safari groups going through. There was probably more reality there in putting on performances. They did, but not to the level of really pushing their jewelry or really having their hand out as much, because they were more self-sufficient. So I think that they were as free in sharing what they could. The first tribe, I had a 21-year-old translator, Sandra, who I've already communicated with, and she wants to go to college so badly. And I'm going to look into that with the tour guide and some other people from our group that wanted to maybe do something for it. She was the one that told me that, yes, the women get beat up, that men, I said, is there drugs or alcohol? She said, no drugs. Alcohol, they do a fermented wine that sometimes gets out of hand, but it is just the nature that if a woman doesn't obey, she gets shoved around. So that was probably more truth in separating her from the rest of the group that I learned about. And she didn't want to get married. She wanted an education, and she was unusual. So I see a progression happening that will eventually happen. That when you go into towns, you see regular Western clothing as opposed to their native wear. Yet when they're at home in the tribe, they're more of their native wear. And there are very few fat people, by the way. Their diets are very limited because having meat is a premium. You know, it's just not that available. So they have a lot of maize and flour and porridge, and they walk everywhere.
Yeah.
So, you know, you don't see a lot of fat people there.
Right.
Yeah.
It's funny. I've talked to a lot of different people in my years, and a lot of people have this perception that all Americans are overweight.
Not far from wrong.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, thankfully, a lot of people are health conscious. So, you know, people that we encounter, especially Southern California here, but
right.
Yeah, that is pretty incredible. And you notice this transition with the people, and from what you're seeing, it sounds like there's some kind of evolution and revolution of the mind happening.
I think so. I think I call it the natural progression, and I'm not sure it's progress, but it is the evolution of things, of holding on. One of our drivers and guides who was educated, he went to the University of Nairobi, said that constantly he's within this culture and modernization, he called it, the two worlds. And he wanted to hold on to his culture, his language, and yet be fluent in English and be part of the world. But how do you integrate the two? And I think that's where I was seeing so much of it. It's not quite, it's still pretty culturally driven, but it's shifting. It's shifting.
Yeah, that's the hard part, isn't it?
It is. And I mean,
keeping culture and still evolving into something different. Yeah.
When we were in Ambosel, which is where on the border of Tanzania, where Mount Kilimanjaro is, it was truly sad because it was the start of their winter and there was hardly any snow on the top of the mountain, and that's 19,000 feet. It's draining because of global warming, which does exist. And the fields all around are flooded, which is not, you'd think, oh, well, the animals are getting water, but what's happening is the amount of flooding is bringing the salt up from the earth and killing all the vegetation. So that literally it's a horrible thing. It's not good at all. And it was really, really sad to see. And because there's less vegetation, the animals are skinny, and therefore everything is affected, the whole chain, food chain.
Yeah.
And that was really hard to embrace and see.
Yeah. We need like a global culture it's funny because I saw a flood happen in Yosemite, in America, not too long ago, like a couple weeks ago, and then Southern California is in a drought. We could find some way to like help each other, like even just within our own country, let alone in these countries. Let's put our differences aside, and let's bring water to this place. It's flooding.
Yellowstone. Look at they're closing Yellowstone down.
Yeah, Yellowstone. That's exactly right. Yeah, it wasn't Yosemite, it's Yellowstone. And yeah, they were flooding, and then yet we were running out of water. Here. Yeah. So like, can we find some way to transfer some of that? Yeah, isn't that strange?
Yeah, it is strange.
I apologize. I have to leave, but I would love to have a part 2 of this discussion. But Rima, I'll let you take it over from here.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Alan.
Always great to see you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Love you.
Love you.
Liz?
Yes.
Now that you've had this incredible experience, and I know you've been to Africa before, but this time you went as a completely new individual. You've completed your journey with finding hidden courage, and you were looking at the next step from this. How is this experience going to impact how you move forward now that you're back in the States? And we definitely have a more abundant life than you saw there. What is the impact that you see in yourself and the way that you actually go out there and approach?
I've been asking that question for myself, and I'm still processing, Rima, and more will be revealed. A couple things come to mind. Number one, finding hidden courage and doing more writing, blogs, I don't know if it's another book, but I think it's leading to me wanting to connect with other women and children in other cultures, and even in this country. We have so much poverty right here. I don't have to go to Africa to see that firsthand. Culturally, we're not a melting pot at all. We're holding on to each segment of our culture, which I'm glad of, and yet at the same time, hopefully coming together to say we're in this country for a reason. So I think, long-windedly, I know more will become clearer, but I want to do a piece of artwork that symbolizes my collage and my feeling for Africa, and that's number one. Number two, I want to, just like this interviewing process now, I want to do more of that to connect the dots between ourselves and women here, and especially what's going on with Roe versus Wade and the dehumanizing of women's choices. It reminds me of, as an example, in Kenya, especially with the Maasais, they've stopped circumcising women. And that's only been 10 years, which is a horrendous thing to do because of ignorance. And I know in India, there's other parts of the world that they're still doing it. The horrible procedure of that. So I believe I have more of a desire to connect with, to travel, to do more of that interviewing process, to continue to do that right here. And again, for the purpose of connecting us as a whole, one planet, just as you're doing with everything that you're doing, but more directed to women, where before I never really had that desire. So my first trip to Africa was to see the animals, and I was blown away. It was the best trip of my life, and that was in 1999. It was a year after my husband had passed, and I was really looking for some meaning in life, and I'm so glad that I went. But I didn't meet with the tribes, and I didn't really talk to the people. It was really about the animals, which still is very important to me. This time, the emphasis was much more on the people and the women. And I found that very rewarding. Plus, I met some new sisters in the small group that we were traveling with. There were 8 of us, 6 women and 2 men. And I've met some new sisters, 3 of which live in Oregon, 1 in Australia, and 1 in Long Beach. So that was very rewarding. We meditated a couple of days and It brought us together. We were very like-minded in our journey. And even though it was a photographic safari, we were there to absorb and feel the experience and to share that. And I'm very grateful. So those are the things that come to mind right now.
Isn't it incredible that you can connect with women from every walk of life? No matter what country, what tribe, you can see some of the commonalities of looking forward to more courage to build our lives, so that the words that come to my brain is Martin Luther King's words, injustice anywhere in the world is, I'm butchering the sentence, but injustice is anywhere in the world is injustice everywhere, basically. I'm butchering the way I'm saying it, but finding that injustice, but correcting it in a way that you still preserve that individual and it's not becoming who you think they need to be, but allowing them to become better versions of themselves. What's your experience as you connected with all these variety of women and being in this journey together in Africa right now and now back in the States?
It's given me more confidence in my own strength and courage.
Mm.
It's made me even embolden myself more, not to put men down or any other group down, but rather we are still, as women, unfortunately, not only in the world, but in this country, still secondhand citizens in either the way we're paid for equal jobs. We're still, at least 15 to 20% lower than a man for the same job. That's after how many years? Secondly, now our individual rights are being removed by legislatures. That is going backwards. And I look at women being positioned as cattle or livestock, that even though they're contributing so much to their village, they don't have the equal respect among their own people. With the exception of the Maasai tribe, at the end, they had a council of 6 men and 2 women, so it was a start.
Mm.
But in the other tribes, women were not a part of any of the decision-making of the village. And yet they're the essence, the core. And the other quality that I saw that I think we've lost here is the importance of the way they view their children. They view their children as their wealth. It was so beautiful. They want them educated. They want them to do better. They really live for their children. And I think we've lost that here too. Again, for so much of what we value, he who has the most toys at the end wins the game. And I think personally, it's affected me to simplify my life of not only things, but activities. Be more focused, be more present in what I'm doing with each person that I'm with, or whatever endeavor I'm taking on, instead of trying to do so much and feeling like I'm of value because I'm doing so much. Be more present and do less.
Thank you for that, Liz, because I feel that a lot, especially in our modern society, that unless you're constantly going and doing things and you almost feel like, oh, I'm not being valuable, when the value is in being present, being connected, understanding what matters. And
when I look at you, Rima, excuse me for interrupting you, but you to me are an exact model of that because of your parents. There's a lot of pressure I'm sure you're feeling from even the mastermind. Am I doing enough? Am I moving far enough ahead? Am I standing still? And yet the most important thing that you're doing is being present and taking care of your parents. And that is the caretaking position is so put down, not evaluated, not valued. It's like, it's not as respected as really, or being a mother is not as respected today as it needs to be, in my opinion, because that's where the real connection comes. So thank you for being a model for that, to stop and say, wait a minute, I'm not going to be influenced by everything externally. I'm staying right in my seat and doing what I can, like the podcast and the beautiful things that you do, your workshops. It's not like you're not doing anything, but your focus is on taking care of them. So
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you.
You. I think that for me and for you, as we met, as you're doing the Finding Hidden Encouragement through the mastermind, that is the key for a new world, a better world, is for us to recognize what truly matters. Now that we have all these wonderful outside and external stuff, and it is driven so many of societies to really come back and go, how do we make our humanity better? How do we have the courage to go, a woman that's being treated unfairly in this society or right here in the United States or anywhere, and not just women, any human being that's not being treated the right way. How do we begin to fix that? So to me, your process of finding hidden courage and doing the interviews was that stepping stone to go, how do we begin really encouraging people to show up and to show up for real? Is that how you feel about your process? What would you like to see next, Liz?
Well, the one thing in what you're saying when you were speaking just really came forth. From this last trip to Africa and talking with these beautiful women and seeing again their strength and their courage. And they don't look at it that way because they don't have a point of comparison. It is just what you do when you get up in the morning and what you do. So I get that. But at the same time, taking that unbelievable stamina and courage and attitude and draw strength from it for myself, that I can pay forward in talking with women of my own stature, my own societal level. Everyone that I meet is step number one. And personally, number one, and then sharing that, number two. And then third, finding those connectors, no matter what segment I'm talking to bring us together, to embolden. And I'll say women, I believe, are the architects of change. And I say that again, I know I sound like a women's liber, and I don't mean to put any other group down, but I truly believe as nurturers in our DNA and what we're built for, that we're going into the Aquarian age, leaving the Piscean age, which is an age of consensus. And who better to build consensus as opposed to top down than women? Because it's in our DNA. We're nurturers. You know, we're multifaceted. That's just the way we're wired. So capitalize on that and build a stronger world, step by step, brick by brick, step by step.
I agree with you wholeheartedly, because we are built a little different in that the way we react with kindness, with love, versus looking for how do we tear each other apart. And I am going to have to honestly say there's also men that are very much in touch with their feminine side of living, that see the world the same way. So
yes, Yes, very
I applaud you for taking the steps of putting the book out there, for going to Africa, and now beginning to put that forth and allowing people to begin to at least stop for a little bit and contemplate with their own life. How are we being better? Can we be better? Because we have definitely a lot of room for growth right here in the United States and globally. And for me, I've said it 1,000 times, I would love to see that globally, we're all better. Not just as women, not just as men, not just as any label that we put on there, but to begin to have the courage to go, is this world working for all of us? And I heard Buckminster Fuller say that sentence in a way, and as soon as I heard it, it's like, that's what I think. And then I see you and your process, and I go, Liz thinks that way too. So I begin to see that there's a lot of individuals that are looking for a better world.
Absolutely. And I think that the more consciousness that is raised with podcasts like this, with books, with just everyone that we meet and greet in each day of our life, that there's more goodness that overshadows any negative, that I truly believe that love does conquer fear, and that there are two basic emotions, love and fear, and you can't be in fear if you're in that place of love. And I know it sounds simplistic, but that's what I found in my own life, my own world, that when I shift gears and can be open to really being present for anyone that I'm speaking with or any situation to the best of my ability, then that's what makes a difference. Because we want to be seen and heard more than anything else, to recognize how much of the same we really are. And that's what connects us.
Beautifully said, Liz. Beautifully said. Is there anything that you'd like to share that I may not have asked you?
No, I think you've done a really, really deep, wonderful job, and Alan too. And, you know, I support you, Rima, and what your efforts, and because we need more of you, me, Alan, and all of the other people that I've met on my journey. We need these voices to take part in the world and to step up and in their own unique, beautiful way, bring forth their gifts and their own courage and their own love. So I thank you for honoring me in interviewing me and letting me share a little bit of my story, because it comes back when I talk about it, and that's something I'm reliving it, and it's beautiful. So thank you.
Thank you. And what is the best way for our listeners and our audience to connect with you, keep up with you?
It's findinghiddencourage.com is my website. And you can contact me there or you can Liz at findinghiddencourage.com. It's my email. And my book is on Amazon, hardcover, softcover, and, and even the Kindle version. So I hope that you will take a look at it and contact me. And hopefully I will be doing more and more workshops and things as I get out there. But thank you, Rima, for allowing me to be a part of your beautiful foundation and umbrella. Thank you.
Thank you. And what's your Instagram? Because you're on Instagram also.
Finding Hidden Courage.
Nice and simple.
Same thing for Facebook, Finding Hidden Courage.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Liz. I so appreciate your time and your energy in all of the things that you've done.
Yeah.
And for our viewers and listeners, thank you for joining us. Remember, your attitude determines your altitude in life. That is how we are going to become a better humanity, connected. Pay attention to your attitude and catch us in the next episode. Thank you so much.
Namaste. Thank you, Rima. God bless.